The Square Ball Podcast.
Hello, welcome to the show that's brought to you with Levi Solicitors. 10% off your legal fees at levisolicitors.co.uk/the Square Ball. Dan here with Michael and Moscow. In this bit, we're going to pick our Ken Bates Villain of the Week and our Gaetano Berardi Hero of the Week. First, let's do the Ken Bates Villain of the Week award. Somebody who made us feel as miserable as Ken Bates did with his long, extended stay at Ellen Road as our former owner, chairman and property developer.
Well, current owner, chairman and soon-to-be property developers got several nominations. This, because we didn't do the normal format last week, they kind of dodged a bullet in truth, because when I went onto the feedback form, you can see the nominations from last week, and it was very Radrizzani, stroke board, stroke 49ers heavy. As it is, they've got a bit of stick this week still from the Bielsa fallout.
I love the idea that they dodged a bullet. Oh, they could have been given villain awards off of a podcast.
Yeah.
They're lucky. They don't know how lucky they are.
Yes, we've got our nominations from the feedback form as submitted by our TSB Plus members. Yeah, I mean, people not really appreciating Radrizzani's visual presence before the game at Leicester, which I don't think is necessarily for the best. It's one of those where you've kind of got to batten down the hatches now until the summer, haven't you? And then you surface afterwards and either own it and say we fucked up, or we did it just at the right time. One of the two. And it's going to be one of the two, let's face it. Who else?
John Terry, Armando Sazdar, which is a good name, nominates him. He did. I mean, he's an idiot at the best of times, but he was particularly tone deaf this week, wasn't he? Tweeting out a picture of. I assume this is why his support for Roman Abramovich this week, tweeting out a picture of him saying he was the greatest or something like that.
He might have been talking about himself. He didn't specify which one of the two of them in the photo it was.
Very, very true. But you just think, not now, John. Yeah. Please.
Leeds players also got a nomination from Yorkie Dave. Loads of them. To be quite frank.
Do you know, I don't think we've mentioned Firpo at all, have we? In
any of these shows today.
In any of these shows. Yeah, he's on his list. Dallas, Firpo, Cock, Click, Allport today. I don't think they all were. Firpo's weird. I felt like he benefited from not being as exposed on that wing, but then he did put in...
What is it about Junior Firpo running over to the right-hand attacking wing position that caused you to have nightmares, Michael?
And he did lay on the best chance of the game, but then occasionally his touch is just awful. Like, he'll just try to control a really quite a basic ball and it'll go miles away. But then again, he's never had a run of games, has he? So maybe it'll start improving.
Maybe. He just sometimes seems to have, like, his brain vacates his head. Like, he's got straw in his head, like, and just does something. It does a madness.
I mean, the tactics were part of that madness before, probably, but yeah, I know what you mean.
BT Sport gets a nomination for their man of the match selection. Rich AD picked out, because it was Casper that got it, wasn't it?
Yes, and he also nominates Jermaine Beckford, who was on there for telling them how to score, which I'm sure they weren't directly listening to. But yeah, there you go.
It feels harsh, but he has played for both clubs. That's worth.
Yes, Leicester fans love him.
Worth mentioning. Again, we've got another nomination for referees and VAR. Are we talking now about the penalty claim, the touch of the foot, the handball, the not handball? It's all so tiresome, isn't it?
Yeah, for Lee and Cheese wants to nominate specifically whoever avoided Chelsea the penalty for the click challenge on Rudiger. It was Chris Kavanagh was the referee for that game. Frank Lampard's famous nemesis, Chris. So he's nominated in great retrospect.
And did he send us an apology letter?
Did we ask for one?
Did the dads have to get together at the school and agree to all get on nicely after this one? Have we even mentioned Lampard getting an apology from the referee?
We mentioned it last week.
Did we? I can't remember.
Yeah, I threw something.
Yeah, you threw the calculator across
the game. So angry about it that things got thrown. But it's still sickening now. But the thing is, Lampard is just running out of people to blame, isn't he? Eventually, he will just be alone in a darkened room, looking into a mirror
with Ashley Cole massaging his shoulders. Maybe
he'll be blaming Ashley Cole in that. I'm trying to get him to the point where he's on his own with nowhere else to blame. Okay. But if Ashley Cole's there, he'll be like, bloody hell, Ashley, could have sorted this out. I don't know why he's turned into a gangster all of a sudden.
Some players then from
goodness me, Ashley,
from Sunday's game. Soyun Chu got picked out for being dire every week, apart from against Leeds when he has a decent game against us. Stephen picked that out.
And Molly Ryan picking out his hair, which I think is unfair, because if he says for achieving a Lions main that men can only dream of, but there's one main on that pitch which is easily better, which is Pascal Strauch's. Luke Aylings is also better, I would say. So
Yeah.
we don't need to be envying the Leicester haircuts here.
It's also
better players as well.
He looks like an elf from Lord of the Rings, because he's kind of got it sort of tucked behind the ears, but then down the neck.
I think it's receding as well. It looks, because he has it scraped back, it's kind of revealing the hairline, and I think it's.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to age well. It's going to go very status quo in a year or two.
You're projecting.
Well, I'm just saying I've cut mine to an appropriate length for the amount of hair I have.
Barnes and Schmeichel were picked up by a number of people. Actually, it's funny how these were all lumped together, really, as the two targets for people's ire. The saves by Schmeichel, and obviously he's humorless, and that's quite an interesting mangling of Schmeichel's name. It's got that interesting combination of S's and H's and C's and M's and E's and I's, hasn't it? So
we know what you mean, Carl. It's near enough.
Yeah.
That twat.
But it's just Casper the Bastard Schmeichel, which is fine. And yeah, Barnes for scoring against us all the time.
They were the big villains because they were the match winners at both ends, weren't they?
Yeah.
They really shone the light onto themselves as conspicuous knobs.
Pecksniff is mentioned. Cockwomble there in the comments.
I mean, Schmeichel is so just unlikable, isn't he? He's done a lot of nice things in his life.
Did you see the thing?
He's a really good keeper as well. Which is annoying.
But
it's kind of annoying we sold
Did you
him.
see the thing that did the rounds in this last week or so of I think was it? Is it?
There's an
his
interview
dad's-
with his dad in 442.
Oh, was it an interview? I was thinking autobiography, but yeah, it was a bunch
No,
of questions that were thrown at him, and he was like, "No, we'll skip that one. No, I don't really want to say anything about that one.
Yeah,
No, not that one."
People asking him like jokey stuff about what went on in the changing room, and he's like, "I'm not even going to discuss anything that went on in the changing room. That's sacrosanct." The one that really stood out to me was he was getting back at people who, because he'd said he would never play for another club in England after leaving Scum, and then he came back to Manchester City. And a lot of Scum fans were obviously annoyed about that, and he's like, well, no, they've completely misinterpreted it. What I didn't want was that at Old Trafford I had to play 60 games a season because we were in Europe all the time, whereas at Manchester City I've only had to play 20 games a season, and that's much more in keeping with what I want to do at this stage in my career. It's just like, what kind of attitude is that? I'd rather go to Manchester City because they're shit and I don't have to play as often. So that's why I'm there. And they're paying me.
Strange sense of humour.
He wasn't even trying to be, there was absolutely no humour there whatsoever. That's the big Schmeichel problem. There is none.
Like father, like son, etc. Sports washing gets a mention by Scrooge McHutch, Chelsea, Roman Abramovich, Newcastle,
Everton.
Yeah, it does sign off with at least it'll not happen in the Championship, and then in brackets puts joking.
Does describe the Madame Tussauds figurine that moves money for Newcastle, which is, she was also saying, I don't think it's
not fair.
I don't think it's really fair that we're going to judge these people on the horrific people that they are or mix with. Let's not judge them on that. Let's just look at the football.
If you do have a photo of them together as mates, you're not punishing somebody for nothing, really, are you?
No, just either don't say anything or own it, one of the two. So yeah, we don't care.
Well, they do own it. They own everything.
Punditry and Jake Humphrey gets a mention as well. I mean, we should say as well, we should probably introduce a new section to this show, and every show that we do actually, about Jake Humphrey, just to show our gratitude for him inventing podcasting in 2020. Because you can go all the way back to 2010 for when we started this podcast.
Powered by steam and hamsters.
Yeah, but it wasn't real until Jake made it so. So thank you, Jake.
He also did that lovely Karen Carney tribute when Leeds United had her murdered, didn't he? Which was, he had to open the show with a big section of it, and it was like, well done, Jake, you've made this all about you. Fantastic.
If anybody's missed this social media contretemps between Jake and it was Barry Glendenning off the Guardian Football Weekly, it's their battle, really, isn't it? But it was Humphrey pointing out that I didn't even know he did a podcast, to be honest, but his podcast apparently sold out some London arena, and he's like, if you told me in 2020 that this niche platform that I had to be persuaded to lower myself to be involved with would be selling out arenas, well, what a visionaries we were. Where back in 2000,
slightly paraphrasing, but that was the thrust of it.
Back in 2010, I mean, we were far from being the first, but the having to send this out on wax cylinders to the
with nothing
three people who cared to hear it,
with nothing but high profile coverage of the Premier League and Formula One, and an enormous contact book to fall back on, and a big budget.
Yeah, it's amazing how they've made a success of that, isn't it?
Carved this thing out.
Vladimir Putin gets nominated by Boney M. Nothing football specific, and maybe like Newcastle Newcastle's owner, we could just say, let's just talk about football. It's nothing to do with anything. However, have you seen that there is an emergency transfer window that's been opened, like as of basically now? We've got a month. If we want to hoover up any Ukrainian or Russian players, they've all been released from their contracts. So maybe a chance to get in, maybe a midfielder, something like that.
We should look to profit from a war?
Yes.
Okay.
Because all morals have gone out the window now. We know
about that.
With Bielsa leaving, that's it. We're just an amoral football club now, normal, like everybody else. So let's capitalise on this humanitarian disaster. You know what I mean. Anyway, Jesse's jeans mentioned by Wisconsin Todd. What do you reckon to the jeans on the touchline? It's all very very chill, isn't it? It's not a suit. It's not a tracksuit. It's some sort of halfway house between the two.
They were a little too bleached for my taste. I saw criticism and I thought, have I got a pair of jeans that colour? I might have.
They seem to be grey stonewashed,
and I did check. Mine are not as pale as that. Right. They're definitely a tone darker.
I don't think they were like pale blue stonewashed. I think they were grey. They looked grey.
Yeah, they were definitely. Yeah. They weren't like sort of Bruce Springsteen in the late 80s kind of stonewash, which I would go for.
Yeah. Wisconsin Todd, who nominated these jeans, is from the same part of the world as Jesse. He says, I am rooting for my fellow cheesehead, but those jeans are beyond the pale. So I think if he's losing goodwill from his hometown, then it's a bad start. Yeah, you got to keep the cheeseheads on side.
Wisconsin Todd also has a go at pundits for the going straight for the Ted Lasso stuff, which is a bit.
It's the new bucket, isn't it?
He describes it as low hanging fruit, which is exactly what it is.
Yeah,
and we would never, because we would never make the easy joke, would we?
No, hell no. Although, I mean, obviously we've done the sort of Leeds Carajo stuff that surrounded Bielsa. Maybe now the next line in merch is giant cheese heads. If we're going to really cash in.
Shame we've got that buttercup going.
It would. It's the
cheese is the next. It's the next progression.
Natural evolution, isn't it? Yeah, we had the milk cup in the 80s, which is now the what is it now? The Carabao milk cup. We've brought out the buttercup over on the extra ball. Admittedly, not a real competition. Just something we're doing. Cheese is the next step.
The hardening of dairy products.
Yeah. Parmesan Cup coming your way soon. A few years' time. Anyway, I think that's all the nominations, isn't it? Who's going to be the villain of the week?
It's a real split between Barnes and Schmeichel and our board.
I mean, I am thoroughly sick of Barnes, I've got to say. The goal he scored at Ellen Road was really rude as well.
Yeah.
The angle that went in from was ridiculous.
He is directly responsible for a lot of misery this week.
And the season we failed to sign him was the failed promotion season, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So if he'd just arrived then, we'd have probably gone up that season. But
yes, and where would we be now?
Already down? Would that have accelerated things? I don't know. We could be getting promoted from the Championship this season again if he'd have signed in that season.
We'd be in the Premier League with Kemar Roof, which would have been interesting as kind of the first choice number 9 ahead of Pat Bamford. Who else did we have? We'd never have signed Ben White.
Samu Saiz could have got his
spitting his way around the division.
It depends
how
that season pans out. I bet everything changes. Samu and...
I suppose he was gone on low. No, he'd gone altogether by that point.
I bet he strikes up a really good friendship with Barnes. The two of them become inseparable.
Samu and Harvey.
And him and Barry Douglas, maybe down the left, having a great time together.
Yeah, that's it. We'd have Barry Douglas at left back. Gianni Alioski would never have been our saviour at left back.
So we're saying that basically Harvey Barnes is out shitting, sports washing and Putin this week.
It does, yeah, giving him a bit of Putin. But it's not. It's about Leeds United, isn't it?
Yes.
He seems more strictly relevant to our very narrow sports worldview.
Yeah, I think Barnes feels like your obvious candidate, and we can judge the merits of the appointment at the end of the season, can't we? I guess. Let's get onto the Gitana Baradi Hero of the Week award. Tough week. Nobody is nominated. This is like on some of those elections that you can get with reopened nominations. Ron on the ballot slip where nobody is allowed to win it. It's been the shittest week imaginable, so no one says Widow Bielsa.
Probably fair. There are some nominations for Leeds players. Dallas gets a nomination, which I was a bit surprised at, given he got done for the goal. But losing my religion, wanted to put him forward. A couple of nominations for Koch.
Yeah, I mean, even these are reluctant, though. Koch, I guess, was pretty good. I mean, come on. It's not exactly enthusiastic, is it?
Yeah, look, Wisconsin Todd saying he looked more confident in his role, which I think is true. Playing in midfield. I still would rather he was a centre-back, to be honest. Jesse gets some nominations as well, just for coming into a bad environment and speaking well and leading the team to a good performance.
I mean, he didn't have to. He could have just stayed away and we could have carried on with Bielsa and nobody would have gone through the last week of grief.
I feel like you're going to get picked up on this a bit, Moscow.
Don't care. It's his choice. It's not a heroic move. He's got a job. He's taken it. He's taken what comes with it.
Okay.
I wish him well. I hope he does a good job.
You just wish he wasn't here in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Basically. I don't think I'm alone in that view.
# welcome Jesse. Yes, well, great.
He is getting support and I am included in that. I just wish I didn't have to.
You're also supporting Tyler Roberts as well, aren't you?
Well, I wish his hamstring, there's a picture of him on Instagram in his hospital bed in the smock, and he's giving a thumbs up and a smile to the people that don't send him constant streams of abuse on social media. So I hope he doesn't hurt.
I mean, we were talking earlier on in the show about lazy jokes. So do we need to repeat all the best performance of the season nominations that have come in for Roberts and so on?
Bless him.
No. And yeah, I do feel sorry for him.
Well, he's not our problem for a while now, is he? It'll be quite nice to not have to talk about him, truthfully, for a little while. Not that I wish him injured, but it is kind of boring to always have to talk about Tyler Roberts because he does always come on.
I think he was just the symbol of the wider situation, wasn't he? He was the one who everybody zeroed in on. He was the lightning rod for all that, which wasn't his fault. Interesting
that Marsh chose to bring him on, though, because he has worked with him for a period now, and he obviously has seen something about him that he thought was worth bringing on. So, yeah. And I don't think Marsh actually got any nominations for injuring him, did he? Well, not that he injured him, but I'm sure it didn't help to leave him hobbling around occasionally, having to try and pass a football 10 yards. If
I'd torn my hamstring, I wouldn't want to be in the middle of a Premier League football match. I'd probably find it a breeze otherwise, Easy these things, as we know.
You'd have to give some of the players a yard because of the pace.
Yeah, maybe stand off them just a little bit.
First yard's in the head, isn't it?
You don't always need to be touch tight, do you? Yeah. Just give yourself the chance to match them physically. Bielsa, nominated for being a hero.
Just for being Bielsa, more or less. But yeah, it's and also the fans who turned up to meet him at Thorpe Arch as well, which was I'm glad someone was there to see him. Although he still seems to be knocking about, doesn't he? There are pictures of him mooching about Wetherby still. I don't know how long he's planning on staying. Maybe forever. He's welcome to.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a sudden change. He wasn't expecting to be having to move. Maybe he's got builders in at the ranch back in Argentina, and he's to give them time to finish what they're doing. And if you've not planned to move halfway across the world, I imagine it takes a bit of time to sort of gather together everything that you need to do to make that happen.
Suitcase will probably be quite light because he's probably given all the Leeds United club wear back to the club, and he's just got his 4 regulation Adidas tracksuits.
Well, we know he is a frugal man. Maybe he's just got a few months left on his lease, and he's thinking, no, I'm not using that. I'm paying £700 a month for this flat. I'm not going to
have a nice holiday in.
I'm not going to use part of my £20 million fortune to get out of this any sooner.
I mean, he has spent the last sort of 4 years completely embedding himself into the community, as we heard with some of the people on the propaganda podcasts who were phoning in, and he's got a lot of, maybe it's just he's got a lot of goodbyes to make, or maybe it's just that he just likes living in Wetherby and was quite happy, and so nothing else to do, just keep living in Wetherby and keep enjoying the day-to-day life that he hoped would last longer than it did.
Well, maybe he can get to see a bit of the country now. We know he works ridiculously hard. He probably doesn't have as long as he would like. He can go and he can go to Featherstone finally.
Yeah,
these places that he's probably just seen on a map.
The Royal Armouries.
Is Manningham really a place? Let's go.
It is.
That sort of a thing.
He's got a park and everything.
Exactly. He's going to get to go on this grand tour of Yorkshire now. Yeah. All the sites. The riding centre in Wakefield.
I like to think I'll bump into him. Maybe, I don't know, down at Sports Direct, some at Foster Square in Bradford.
Exactly.
Going to get the kids some new trainers. Marcelo's in there just looking at the different footballs.
He turned up in Wilco's in Brighouse, didn't he?
Did he?
It's one of the photos of him quite early on. I think it was his first season. He was in Wilco's in Brighouse. I think it turned out that the club dentist was in around that part of the world, and so he'd been to have his teeth looked at and just popped into Wilco's on the way home, I guess. But yeah, of all the places it turned up, because obviously Wetherby, Morrison's and Costa are on his doorstep, that's fine. But What the hell is he doing?
He might have needed a new broom handle. Who knows? Or a tin of paint for his decking.
You can get
it's a good range of stuff. Yeah, deodorants, shower gels, pet stuff. I don't get any pets, did he? But yeah, creosote. Yep. Absolutely everything at Wilco's. Great.
Yeah, can't knock it. Can't fault their effort.
Great bunch of lads.
Great bunch of lads, Wilco's. Right, I feel like we've gone off piece. I mean, we've got a few other nominations here as well for some of our players. But it does feel. Do we want to give this to Bielsa just to bookend it and say thank you, and then we close the door on that until the end of the season?
Then we never speak of him again.
Yeah,
I'll start tearing these. I'll smash the head off the Bielsa gnome in a minute. I'll pull all the pictures down.
I will still be speaking about him between now and the end of the
season. No, but I mean, like in terms of this,
don't want to spoil the future for anybody, but I'm not going to stop talking about Marcelo Bielsa.
But in terms of this award, Moscow, I feel like just to bookend the era, because last week was a great outpouring of grief and feeling and all the rest of it, and now we're back to the normal format. We give him this award just to say thank you.
As it stands, he's won more recently than Jesse Marsh, hasn't he, as a Leeds manager? So
that's true.
You know, give it to him for that.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesse, book your ideas up for God's sake.
Right, okay. Is it Bielsa's then? Are you fine to go along with that?
Mm-hmm.
Good. I can sense your enthusiasm, lads.
Well, it's sad giving it to him, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But it's been a draining and an emotional week. I think I kind of managed to start rationalising it by about Wednesday last week. I think we did the Phil Hay show on Wednesday, didn't we? Because the media day up at Thorpe Archer was on Thursday, so we went a day early on that. And I think by the time that came around, I'd kind of I was all cried out, as the phrase goes.
I think it's partly why I'm looking forward to getting back to Ellen Road as well, because you need a bit of a reset on it. You need to go back to the place to see what it's like afresh.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that
full of singing for Marcelo Bielsa.
Well, it will be, but that's
going to be weird, isn't it?
That's part of it, though. It needs to be done a bit. I mean, it'll be done for 30 years, I would imagine, or more. Probably people will still. It'll be the song that he's brought out when we're 6-0 down at Liverpool in 2040. People will just think, should we sing about Bielsa? Something to do. It'll never stop, will it, in truth? But I feel like it's important to have that.
Nor should it.
That moment of,
mind you,
going back into Ellen Road and just experiencing a game there again. And
we don't still sing Sergeant Wilco's Barmy Army, do we? But it's funny, I don't know if this is maybe a product of the social media era and saturation coverage of everything, that people try and find a thing to identify with and cling on to. Maybe that's what's different about Bielsa, is that he's done it in this era.
There should be more about Wilco, shouldn't there? Is the simple answer to that. That we sing more about Don Matteo scoring at the San Siro than we do about winning a league title, which is not fair.
But it is a generation ago as well, if not more now. It feels like it's been the blinking of an eye.
I hate to break it to you, but so was Don Matteo's goal.
Well, that was a generation. It was 2 generations ago, really, wasn't it? Then the league title, but still, it's still there. But yeah, it's funny, isn't it? What a strange week it's been. And I think that was the idea of going back to normal. Was a thing that was hard to get your head round when we were all in the midst of the immediate aftermath and all the grief and all the upset and the outpouring and all that. But back to it we will be, I guess. And it will be strange not seeing him, doing his 13 steps across the front of the dugout, and just, as I said last week, like seeing different patterns of play, like that we're not used to, or Melier maybe having a slightly quieter day, or somebody just lofting the ball from the back away when it has to go.
Boo! Boring.
We're gonna have to kind of unlearn all our patterns, aren't we, when it comes to watching Leeds? But I don't know. Fingers crossed it goes all right. So yeah, thank you, Marcelo. And time to look ahead, isn't it?
No.
That does wrap up the show for this week. We'll see you next time.
The Square Ball Podcast.